Polymarket has recently gone into some hot water. As one of the two mainstays in the prediction market space, Polymarket has infiltrated politics, it's made big influences on social media platforms, and it's even made inspiration for these platforms to then try and develop their own forms of prediction markets. But unfortunately, they found themselves into some controversy over some, let's just call it unique marketing strategies. Now, in terms of whether or not it's fraudulent or just deceitful, I'll let you be the judge of. Now, to let you guys kind of know what's going on, both the Wall Street Journal and Politico are currently running journal articles on Polymarket's unique marketing strategies. And both of these cover two separate issues, but they kind of involve the same thing: payments to influencers and the content that comes from those influencers. Essentially, with the Wall Street Journal, their focus was more on the payments made to influencers who then made pretty much fake videos to try and garner hype for Polymarket. And then on the Politico side, you had payments to all sorts of figures with big fandoms that would then make advertisements without disclosing they were advertisements. So, first things first, let's cover the Wall Street Journal focus. And in this article, we kind of start off with a banger. Essentially, Polymarket would pay young influencers who primarily had target demographic audiences around me. Imagine me in that 20 to 25-year-old male category who's going to be the most risk pro and is going to be participating in losing their money on prediction markets. So they would find these influencers who had cult followings of people in my demographics, and then they would pay the influencers, and the influencers would then go on a separate website that was not Polymarket, but was actually Poi Market, as the Wall Street Journal has dubbed it. And this is because the font that Google uses for its URLs when you type things in, the capital I looks like an L. So essentially, when people would look at these fake videos that, again, weren't marked as promotions or ads for Polymarket, they were just made like almost like if a day trader made a video and was like, look at this trade I'm making, it would be exactly like that. They wouldn't see that it was a fake website because it was basically a copy and paste of Polymarket, but under a slightly different URL that's kind of naked to the human eye. Now, what's fascinating about this is that the Wall Street Journal found about thousands of videos that kind of use this similar format, go to the fake website, don't disclose it's an ad, and just pretend it's somebody who's making a lot of money off of Polymarket. And in total, they saw that based on these fake videos, they'd have about 900,000 in earnings. However, what's kind of interesting is that they then looked back in time and looked at Polymarket at the same time. And overall, these trades that were being hyped up as just social media interactions, again, not only were fake, but also ended up losing. So overall, if you had done all of these same transactions that resulted in 900,000 of fictitious winnings, you would actually be in the hole and in debt 160,000. Now, I want to make it clear, these are not like fictitious things you'd see with an advertisement for like sports betting, where it's people sitting around and it's obviously like an exaggeration and a thing that didn't happen. These are people who are pretending that it is the real deal. It'd be like if Schwab or a Fidelity paid me, and then I went on to a fake version of Schwab that looks exactly like it and just did a bunch of fictitious options to try and hype something up. It would be a very similar form to that. So, this is kind of where we get our misrepresenting and what some people are labeling as fraud. Now, one of the things I personally found really fascinating with this is that a considerable amount of these videos were used to hype up the mentions category. This is basically when celebrities are going to go and do public discussions or if the president is going to have a press conference or something, you can get a lot of different bets on what they'll say and the likelihood that they'll say or talk about something or mention a word or whatever. And I've seen multiple different things that even the sharks or like the professionals on Polymarket who actually do make money off of this app, they actually avoid this category. Like the odds are horrendous in this category. And so a lot of that budget that Polymarket was using to pay these younger influencers was then going to hype up this category. So one of the good examples that they actually highlighted was a user who had been paid by Polymarket made a video about if the president was going to say the word McDonald's publicly in the next month or whatever. And this was a fake transaction because the news clip they end up using at the end of this to kind of be like, oh my God, I made this big win, had come from 2 months prior. Whereas the actual transaction that person made would have been a loser. So that's a really good example of that. Now, switching our focus a little bit to the Politico kind of investigation and article that's running right now at the same time, this one focused more on big name celebrities, specifically in the political influencer space. So, an example of this would be a Nick Shirley, who I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. He was the Somalian daycare person in Minnesota, and he kind of got a cult following from that whole ordeal. So individuals like him, and when I say like him, it did tend to look like it skewed a little bit more of the right wing influencer space, with also that one Riley Gaines girl who was like that fifth place swimmer that one time, who's now a political influencer. But they did also have political influencers from the left. So they are very much spreading their bets. But basically, they would pay these people to, again, promote Polymarket in some manner or fact. So the thing they used for Nick Shirley, he was wearing a Polymarket hoodie for one of his ads that he didn't necessarily say was an ad, and then he was also bringing up the odds on Polymarket in a way that would seem like not related whatsoever. It would just be like, oh, and the odds of this thing happening are only 85% as of Polymarket, which is a strategy you see a lot. For instance, unrelated, but I'm somebody who watches the UFC all the time, and instead of like doing live betting odds, they've switched to how Polymarket sees it and the odds on that. And people will cite that for the election cycles and multiple different things. Now, another interesting component of the Politico story is that the chief marketing officer and the company as a whole has said that they don't necessarily know why the people didn't put in that it was a Polymarket sponsorship and it was not their intention to falsely advertise. And this can be shown by basically when these two stories dropped, Polymarket started having people retroactively go back and add that it was sponsored by Polymarket. But when they said that this wasn't necessarily the case and it wasn't their intention to do this, Politico went a step further and actually was able to attribute $350,000 in payments from the chief marketing officer's PayPal to these influencers. So when they said, oh, we had no idea that this was going on, that's not exactly representative of the truth because I don't know if you're like me, but I don't just randomly on a whim make $350,000 in payments to random big name influencers and then don't know what's going on. Like, that's not a small portion of money, right? Like, if you're going to accidentally make payments to people, it's probably not going to be over the course of multiple different influencers and $350,000. Now, a lot of public outcry is hoping that Polymarket is held responsible. I mean, it's a little bit of shady business to have people make a bunch of social media content and then also pay clippers who then throw these things into montages or try and make their own things and just boost this virality through fake transactions and fake bets, or also just paying people to not disclose that they're advertising and just try and plant it subconsciously into people. And I personally would not hold out on any form of, well, get back or controversy blowing over and then being handled in a legal capacity. And I think one of the big reasons that I personally would not be holding out for this is that people like Donald Trump Jr. are actually affiliated with both Polymarket and Kalshi, where he's an investor in Polymarket and a paid advisor for Kalshi. Now, in terms of my thoughts and kind of on this whole ordeal, I've been someone who's been pretty outspoken against prediction markets in general, and it's not because, oh, it's gambling and I like hate gambling or something like that. In fact, I think a lot of people, whatever they want to do with their free time in a legal capacity and their entertainment, you should absolutely go for it. And I don't want to be someone who controls that. But for me, it's been that the prediction market space has tried so hard to not frame itself as gambling. It's almost tried to swing itself over into investments and make it sound like this is a great and smart decision. And I think we can see a lot of that in the language of some of these social media posts, where these people are hyping it up like they would an investment in something. They're talking about, oh, this is the biggest, easiest win ever. This is free money. Like it's trying to just garner hype and it's not taking it like it's gambling. Like if they were being realistic and these videos were like how I would shoot it, where it would be like a friend and another friend are hanging out, and one of them's like, "Oh my God, wouldn't it be funny if I threw $5 on the Congo to win the World Cup? Wouldn't that just be dumb?" And they're just joking and having a good time. That would be like social media content where I don't think that many people would throw a hissy fit that, hey, Polymarket has paid influencers to make fake videos, like that type of content. But when you look at these things and it's people being like, this is free money, this is the best deal ever, and it's on Polymarket right now, it can't lose. And then they like fake themselves making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're just trying to pick up a bunch of kids who are gullible, who are in a bracket that doesn't necessarily think out its decisions the best to make irresponsible financial decisions. It just irks me the wrong way. And I would love to see some form of regulation or some form of something hit this company, because again, you can't just pay people to hype up your platform and make fictitious content that indicates that, oh, they're all winning and it's a big win now and everyone needs to be participating on Polymarket, but they're not going to disclose it because that's just, it feels so wrong and it gives me an icky feeling. And you'd hope that a sensible government would see that and be like, oh, they're just trying to make content that tricks people, that tricks young gullible people who will then go lose their money on Polymarket. So overall, that's kind of the controversy that's going on with Polymarket right now. I'll definitely be keeping my eyes glued to this because I've already previously made videos discussing prediction markets as a whole, as they initially started trying to branch over into this weird gray area where they tried starting coming off as investments, and that rubbed me the wrong way so much. Like again, I understand that there are definitely forms of investing that are essentially gambling. But even when we go to those forms, if you're owning the actual shares of something, you at least have ownership of something. Like even if that company goes bankrupt, as long as they have assets, yeah, you're going to be way the heck down the line and you might not receive much at all, but you still have some ownership of something. When you have people who are fictitiously advertising for a primary category on Polymarket that is well known to have horrible odds for the user base, and even the professional sharks avoid, and you're making fictitious content, and even the odds in general outside of just the terrible categories for odds of making money on Polymarket are historically bad, and no one really makes money outside of the best sharks and the people with the most information that kind of understand everything. Like it's wrong to try and make that game sound like it's investing. In the same sense that if casino companies tried to make it sound like, oh, it's an investment and we're going to make have people make a lot of fictitious content playing these games, that would come off as wrong and would be false advertising, basically. So, overall, those are my thoughts on the controversy of Polymarket right now. Thank you for watching.